ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track, and ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
Well, they blew up the chicken man in Philly last night. They blew up his house, too. Down on the boardwalk, they're ready for a fight. Gonna see what them racket boys can do. Now there's trouble busting in from out of state, and the DA can't get no relief. Gonna be a rumble on the promenade, and the gambling commissioner's hanging on by the skin of his teeth. Everything dies, baby, that's a fact. But maybe everything that dies someday comes back. Put your makeup on, fix your hair up pretty, and meet me tonight in Atlantic City.
This is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. By way of a little history, I'm in this football pool that I've been in for years. My Uncle Carmine and Aunt Camille were in it. My cousin is in it. I've gotten my cousin Anthony in it. And for the last, and basically you just pick games every week. I don't know very much about football. So by and large, I enjoy watching the game, but I'll be honest, I'm lucky if I can name more than a player or two on each team. And every week I would make the most unorthodox picks. I would pick teams based on where my brother-in-law lives or what affiliates are carrying our show. But a funny thing happened. The last year or two, I have dominated this football pool, won week after week, and I took a great deal of pride in this. I would tell the listeners, you want to make money? Just bet with me, in spite of my lack of football knowledge. And people would say, I don't understand how you're making picks like this, but they're all working. It's kind of like Diane on Cheers picking football games based on where their good opera houses were. Whatever the case was, it was working. And then coming into this season, I hit a brick wall. I am getting killed week after week. There are 27 players in this football pool. Right now, I'm at 21. I am getting hammered. So I was lamenting about this on air, and I got a nice note from the best voiceover artist in the business, Steve Kramer. And Steve Kramer said, wait a minute, aren't you on WOND in Atlantic City? I said, yeah, love Atlantic City. Of course we're on WOND. Love being on there. He says, Paul Kelly, the head honcho over at WND, he hosts this great fantasy sports radio show on satellite radio, and he's a whiz at picking football picks. Whatever you have to do, get him to make your picks. And even if you have to cut him in on your winnings, and you don't have anything else to worry about. So I figured we would beseech Paul. I've been after him for 6 weeks to try to do this. And obviously, apparently, there's a lot of other people trying to get him to make their picks. Whatever the case may be, we have persuaded him to join me and make our picks this week. I am very, very pleased to welcome the host of Fantasy Sports Radio on SiriusXM, a longtime bacon enthusiast, and the president and general manager of Longport Media in South Jersey. And we're privileged to be on WOND as part of the Longport Media team, the one and only Paul Kelly. Paul, thanks for joining me on the radio.
Oh, my pleasure, Frank. Good to be with you. And unfortunately for me, it sounds like you've set the bar pretty high here on these picks the last couple of seasons, and not so much this year, but the last couple of years, apparently you were killing it. So we'll try and get you back on the right track.
Thank you, Paul. There's a lot of people counting on you, Paul. Not the least of which is me. Before we get into your actual picks, and there's some good games this week that I want to get your take on. I feel, I didn't even know that you did this whole fantasy sports thing, and apparently apparently, looking into you a little bit, there's all these people that know you just from that. I knew you just from your, stewardship of Longport Media. It's almost kind of like you're leading double lives. That you have these whole different universes of people that know you from different aspects of the radio business. Is that fair to say?
That is 100% accurate. Yeah. So the two things that I do, running the radio group here in Atlantic City, New Jersey, is completely separate from what I do on SiriusXM satellite radio. The two really don't intersect at all. And to your point, the folks who know me as a local Atlantic City radio guy usually don't know that I also host a national show on SiriusXM talking about sports and vice versa. So it's a pretty unique situation. But the thing is, I love both gigs, so I'm not giving either one up. So it keeps me busy, Frank, but I love it.
Well, that's great. I love it. I know you do a lot of music radio, too. You do a great show or a great air shift on Cool 98.3. How'd you get into radio to begin with?
Man, so I moved down to the Atlantic City area to go to college, Stockton University here just outside of Atlantic City.
Where were you from originally, Paul?
I'm from Monmouth County, Eatontown.
Gotcha.
So been in Jersey my whole life, went to school at Stockton, and from the time I was a little kid, I always wanted to be on the radio. I would play radio station in my bedroom when I was a little kid and make air check tapes. And when I got to college, I was like, you know what, maybe this could actually be a career path. And I ended up getting an internship at one of the local radio stations here in the Atlantic City market. And basically worked my way on up to air talent and program director, and eventually now I'm running a whole cluster of radio stations
That's
here.
Great.
So I've been lucky enough to work in the business down here for the last 30 years.
Let's talk about your football prowess. What makes you so good, whether it's fantasy sports or picking winners and losers? How did you get such an accomplished and renowned football acumen?
I think what makes me so good, frankly, is other people. We have an amazing team of guys at fantasypoints.com. That's our website. And we've got guys who are watching every play of every game. They're analyzing the tape. They're digging into the data. They're charting every play. So we've got so much information at our fingertips at fantasypoints.com. And basically, I utilize that information, to make my picks, whether it's trying to figure out which players are going to do well in a given week or which teams may come out on top. So it's all about information, and we got a great group of guys who puts it all together at the website, fantasypoints.com.
The other day, I was happy to have on Peter Funt, the son of Alan Funt from Candid Camera. And he's got this great book out about fantasy football. And we talked a little bit about the explosion of fantasy football in recent years. I'm curious if you have a take as to what that's all about. What does that do to?
Well, I can tell you that when I started playing fantasy football as a kid, me and my buddies, we thought we invented it. We didn't know it was a thing. And back then, this is pre-internet. We had to calculate our own scores by hand. We had to wait for the newspaper to come out the next morning, look at the box scores, and figure out who did what and all that. I think it really started to take off when the internet started to take off. And all of a sudden, you had access to all these statistics in real time, and websites started catering to folks who had this interest. And it really exploded, I think, when the NFL themselves decided to embrace this, and now you can play fantasy games right on NFL.com, So I think that was really the big thing that caused it to explode, the fact that the NFL embraced it.
Gotcha. At 30 minutes after the hour, this is The Other Side of Midnight. My guest is Paul Kelly. He's the host of Fantasy Sports Radio on SiriusXM and also the president and general manager of Longport Media in South Jersey, which has a cluster of great radio stations, including one we're privileged to be on right now. Paul, why do you think football has exploded more in the fantasy realm than baseball has? I used to play fantasy baseball years ago. I stopped because I didn't like to be in the habit. One, it was time consuming, but two, I didn't like being in the habit of rooting for players that were playing against my favorite team, the Mets. I'm curious why fantasy football seems to have such widespread enthusiasm and acceptance, much more so than I think fantasy baseball ever did.
I think a piece of what you just said there contains the answer, and that's fantasy baseball, fantasy basketball, fantasy hockey. These are daily activities. Mm-hmm. It is a grind. Mm-hmm. It keeps you busy. You got to stay on top of it every single day. You're shuffling people in and out of your lineup. Football's once a week. You set your lineup once a week. I think it's much more conducive to the casual fan that doesn't necessarily want to spend hours every day thinking about this stuff. You know, they can kind of deal with it once a week when it's time to pick up new players, and maybe they think about it again on Sunday morning when they set their lineup. So it's just an easier game to play, fantasy football, as opposed to the sports that go off almost every day.
Let's talk about the picks that you're going to make for us in a minute. Do these come with any sort of guarantee? If people make these bets in accordance with your recommendations, do you insure their bets or anything like that? Maybe half of their losses, maybe.
My guarantee is that these picks are for entertainment purposes only. So take from them what you will. If I say something that makes sense to you, go ahead and play it. But you're on your own. It's your money.
Duly noted. Hey, Paul, how have you found the transition from being an on-air personality to being in first management and then ownership? You know, it's interesting. Even at every radio station, there's a little bit of the us being the air talent versus them being management and ownership. I can't believe they're doing this to us. I can't believe they're making us work Christmas Day or whatever the case may be. You've been on kind of both sides of that fence. How's that worked for you?
Yeah, and Frank, as you know, as somebody who's been in this business a while yourself, that typically somebody who is running the station or running the cluster typically is a guy who comes from the sales side of the business. Oh, yeah. He's a money cruncher. Yep. He's a numbers guy and all that. I'm the opposite. I come from the programming side. I come from the air talent side. So it's a pretty unique situation for me because I feel like I can do a nice job of kind of bridging, you know, the folks on the programming side of the building to the folks on the sales side of the building. Like, I understand what needs to happen. We need to hit certain numbers and revenue goals and all that. But I also respect the talent and the product, and I understand what goes into making it. So I feel like I've got kind of a unique perspective into what goes into actually making a product that the sales team can actually go out and sell.
That moment when you realize your skincare is actually working. That's Rodan & Fields, the #1 female dermatologist-founded skincare brand in the U.S. Designed by 2 dermatologists who don't just know women's skin, they know how to formulate for it. Rodan & Fields, love what you see. Tap the banner or visit rodanandfields.com/Spotify to get your exclusive welcome offer.
This episode is brought to you by Principles. Ray Dalio, legendary investor and New York Times best-selling author, wants to pass along his understanding of how countries go broke because he believes the U.S. budget and debt situation needs to be addressed. To give you that knowledge, he has put the draft of his book, How Countries Go Broke, The Big Cycle, online for free. It's available now at economicprinciples.org.
Lights, camera, innovation. Walt Disney Studios chose advanced 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to transform the movie-making process. Together, we kept a remote production hub in Hawaii in sync with a team in California to bring Lilo and Stitch to theaters this summer. This is picture-perfect collaboration. This is Walt Disney Studios with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
You know, I've fantasized about doing what you've done from time to time, is making that transition from air talent to ownership. Then I look at what happened with Stephen King and his radio stations in Maine, and he was losing so much money year after year, and Stephen King's got a lot of money. He eventually just shut them down, and now those stations are dark. Is it still possible to make money in owning radio stations?
It is, and we're doing it. And look, not a lot of people are doing it, unfortunately. But for us, I mean, the key is to be as local as we can, to be as live as we can, to be as community-oriented as we can, and to actually matter down here. I mean, you can go to any number of places for entertainment, right? But local entertainment is something unique that I think radio, to a large extent, is the only one that can offer it in the way that we do.
I love that. What a inspiring message for people that want to see local radio survive. All right, if you're just tuning in, this is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. The moment you've all been waiting for. Get out your pens, get out your tape recorders, because these picks are guaranteed to make you a lot of money. Well, at the very least, they can't be any worse than the picks I've been making every week this season. All right, let's start. Thursday night, San Francisco and the Rams. San Francisco's favored by 2.5 points. Who do you like there?
2.5 points. I will give the 2.5 points to the Rams. So give me the 49ers here. They're at home. They are clinging to their very slim playoff hopes here. Like every week is a must-win game now, the rest of the way for the 49ers. So they've got all the motivation in the world. I think if this was a 3.5 point spread, you could convince me to go the other way, but at 2.5, I'll take the 49ers.
See, this is where you're a pro. All right. I still call them the Redskins, but the Washington Commanders are favored 7.5 over New Orleans. How do you see that?
Yeah, I can't get used to saying the name either. I'm going to take the Commanders, giving the 7.5. New Orleans, they're in rough shape right now. Derek Carr, their quarterback, is injured, so they're going to be rolling with a backup quarterback. They've got nothing to play for. The Commanders are trying to build some momentum here as they make a push for the playoffs. I think the Commanders win this one by 2 scores.
By the way, just as an aside, I lost a couple of games last week by 0.5 point. I've always said the people that calculate these point spreads and the over-under have to be the most intelligent people in the world. Whoever's doing this should be Secretary of Defense or Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Right. How do they calculate these point spreads and so often get so close to what the actual spread would be?
I'm still waiting for a team to score 0.5 point, by the way. I've yet to see that happen. Not sure how they do that, but it's amazing. Well, you know what a lot of people don't realize is when the odds makers are coming up with these numbers, it's not even necessarily what they believe will happen. It's what they believe the public thinks will happen. Their goal is to get equal betting money coming in on both sides of the line. So they try to find that sweet spot where 50% of the people will like the Commanders and 50% will like the Saints. And so they try and find that magic number, and they've set it at 7.5. I like the Commanders. All
right, Houston is favored 2.5 points over Miami. How's this game going?
Dolphins coming off a win against the Jets last week in overtime. Texans are coming off a bye here. They're rested. They've had 2 weeks to get ready for this. I'm happy to give the 3 points, so give me Houston.
All right. Speaking of the Jets, they're playing Jacksonville. The Jets, shockingly, are actually favored by 3.5 points. I didn't think it was possible for the Jets to be favored in any game these days. How's this game looking for you?
I thought the same thing. I'm like, can I responsibly bet the Jets giving points to anyone? And I think the answer is yes, if it's the Jaguars. So the Jags are in trouble. They're playing with a backup quarterback. The Jets are actually playing a little bit better as of late. They've got 2 really good wide receivers, and the defensive secondary is the weak spot of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I think the Jets will move the ball, they'll score, and they'll win by at least 3.5.
All right, Cincinnati favored 5.5 over Tennessee.
Yeah, look, the Bengals' offense is incredible. They're scoring tons of points every week. They're just not winning many games. But we just saw them win on Monday night against Dallas by 6. Dallas is better than Tennessee. I think this should be a bigger number. So give me the Bengals, -5.
All right. How about Baltimore and the Giants? Now, Baltimore obviously has been, they had a pretty good season last year, but I don't see any point spread on this Baltimore Giants game, which I was somewhat surprised by, unless I'm looking at an old list or something.
Well, I was going to ask you, do the Giants still play football? Is that still a thing? So the number I see out there.
Oh, no. Okay. I was looking at the wrong line. 14.5. 14.5.
Okay.
Baltimore
at 14.5, I'm going to take the Ravens giving all those points. But the Giants are just dreadful on offense right now, and the Ravens really are one of the elite teams in the NFL. So, when you give as many points as we're giving here with the Ravens, you always worry about the Giants maybe
Right.
getting like a garbage time touchdown at the end to cover the spread, but I'm willing to go with the Ravens here. I could see them winning this game like 30-10.
Oh, yeah, unfortunately, so can I. Kansas City favored by 6.5 over Carolina.
Let's see, Cleveland rather. Kansas City.
Oh, yeah, excuse me,
is
Cleveland,
at
right.
Cleveland this week. And what was the number, Frank?
6.5.
Yeah, I'm taking Kansas City here. Look, the Chiefs have been criticized a lot this year because they're barely beating teams, so they're not blowing teams out. But the Cleveland Browns have Jameis Winston at quarterback. He loves to throw interceptions to the other team. I think the Chiefs will take advantage of that and win by at least a touchdown.
All right, speaking of Carolina, they're favored by 1.5 over Dallas. Where do you see that game going?
But I feel like I'm picking all the favorites here, but I'm going Carolina here because, again, we got Dallas playing with a backup quarterback. The Panthers, who aren't great, are actually getting good quarterback play out of Bryce Young, who is starting to find his legs here at quarterback for them. So I'll take the Panthers at home.
All right, an all-Pennsylvania game. The Eagles favored 4.5 over the Steelers.
Yeah, 4.5. Once again, I'm going to give the points here with Philly.
Oh, boy.
The Steelers are going to be without George Pickens, their star wide receiver this week. The Eagles are just too good. I mean, the Steelers always have a chance. They got a terrific head coach, Mike Tomlin. They're always a well-coached team. It wouldn't surprise me if the Steelers covered the spread, but I got the Eagles winning by at least 5.
All right, wouldn't know who to pick here because we have affiliates in both cities. Detroit is favored 2.5 points over Buffalo. Where do we go here?
Yeah, so Buffalo is coming off a game in which they scored 40 points against the Rams and still lost last week. So an emotional loss. Now they're going into the most difficult building to play in the NFL, Ford Field in Detroit. The Lions are a terrific, well-rounded football team. If they're favored by less than a field goal against anybody, I will take them. So give me Detroit.
All right, Detroit. Denver favored by 4.5 over Indianapolis. What about that game?
This one, Denver has been one of the surprise teams of the year. They've got a really solid defense, and they're getting good play out of their rookie quarterback, Bo Nix. That being said, Indianapolis always has a chance with Anthony Richardson at quarterback. That guy can make a big play at any time. So I'll take the Colts getting the points.
All right, I like that. Okay. It's nice to see we're not picking all favorites. Chargers favored by 2.5 over Tampa Bay.
Going right back to the favorites on this one, though. The L.A. Chargers against Tampa. This is a tough defense that the Chargers have. Tampa Bay has been a lot of fun to watch. I'm a fan of Baker Mayfield. I like the way that he plays, but this is a tough test for them this week against a very stout Charger defense. I think the Chargers do enough here to win by a field goal.
All right, Arizona favored by 6.5 over New England.
Man, the Cardinals are a mess right now. They really are. Now, the Patriots are not a very good football team, but they are coming off a bye, and I think they, at the very least, will be well prepared to play this football game. So, I mean, the Cardinals I just have no faith in right now, so give me the Patriots getting the points.
All right, Green Bay and Seattle. Green Bay is favored by 2.5.
Yeah, I don't think they should be. I think Seattle wins the game outright. So give me Seattle at home. Their defense is playing really well. The Packers quarterback Jordan Love has been a little bit shaky here, so Seattle is also a very difficult place to go in and win as a road team, so I'll take the Seahawks.
All right, another game where we have two great cities where we have great affiliates. Minneapolis, the Vikings, Minnesota are favored by 6.5 over the Bears. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, I like that number for the Vikings, 6.5. I think they should win by at least a touchdown here. The Vikings are rolling, and the Bears are a bit of a mess, and the Vikings did a number on them just a couple of weeks ago. I think we see the same thing here. Vikings giving the points. Lastly,
the Falcons and the Raiders. How does that one play out?
Well, this one, the Raiders' season is basically over. They're not going to the postseason. The Falcons do still have a chance, but their quarterback, Kirk Cousins, has been dreadful for the last month. The Raiders have quarterback problems of their own, but they play tough every week. So in a home game, I'll take the Raiders getting the points. They probably still lose, but they'll cover the spread.
All right, this is a good lineup here. I like this. Good mix of favorites and a couple of underdogs. Take it to the bank. I certainly can. I'll buy you a drink or something if I win this week. By the way, Paul, I saw a couple of photos on your Twitter, and people should follow you on Twitter, where you had depicted scenes from your favorite local sports bar. I spend far too much time in sports bars in Atlantic City. What is your favorite?
In Atlantic City, in my view, the best place to go watch the game, bet on the game, enjoy food, enjoy drink has got to be at the Borgata. Borgata is the class of the city. They've got the best sports book, and they did it right because they designed their sports book to be a sports bar. You can go in there. It's a full fan experience. You know, they've got great food and drinks, obviously TVs everywhere that you look. Not only is that the best place to go for dinner or to stay or to gamble, it is the best sports book in the city as well, Borgata.
By the way, if people want to follow Paul on Twitter, they can find him at Paul Kelly Tweets, spelled exactly how it sounds. How has legalized sports betting changed Atlantic City's fortunes? Has it been the gold mine that a lot of people were hoping it would be?
The answer would be somewhere in between, right? I mean, it's been good, but people, for the most part, are staying home to place their bets, right? It's so easy just to pick up your phone and get your picks in that way rather than physically going to the brick-and-mortar casino. Again, that's why I think Borgata has done it right. They've created an experience there. It's not enough to just say, hey, come here and bet on the game and watch it on the TV, but we're not going to offer you anything else, no food, no drinks. It's got to be an experience to bring the people into your facility, and Borgata has done that. So it's been good for the city, but we need to continue finding ways to encourage people to physically walk into the building.
Lastly, Paul, and perhaps most importantly for people that don't care about football or Atlantic City, what's the story with all those omelets that you post on Twitter? I mean, I'm an egg enthusiast. I don't know that I share your enthusiasm for bacon, but are you making all these omelets that I'm seeing?
I am in no way talented enough to put together an omelet like that. That is my lovely and beautiful and loving girlfriend who makes me a delicious omelet every Sunday morning. I got a long day ahead of me on Sundays. I'm on the air for 5 straight hours talking about the football games as they happen on SiriusXM. So she makes me a delicious omelet. She cooks up a whole pound of bacon. I don't eat the whole pound, but she cooks up a whole pound of bacon, and it is the perfect way to start my football Sunday. I look forward to it all week.
That's great. When you said lovely, beautiful, and loving, at least one of those changes when the transition gets made from girlfriend to wife. I'll let people make their own judgments about which of those there are. Hey, Paul, if people want to hear your show, the fantasy sports radio program that you do on SiriusXM, how can they do that?
Yeah, so every weekday morning, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern on Channel 87. It's Fantasy Sports Radio, and our show is exclusively fantasy football, and we do it 52 weeks a year. Even during the off season, we're talking football on SiriusXM Channel 87. And on Sundays during the regular season, beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern, the early kickoffs, we are covering the games as they happen, as they unfold. We're doing instant fantasy analysis, so basically, if you listen to us on Sundays on Channel 87, you'll know everything that's going on.
Wow, outstanding. Paul Kelly, if you want to comment on any of his picks or any portion of our discussion, you're welcome to give me a call. Our phone number is 646-720-0635. That's 646-720-0635. This is The Other Side of Midnight. Straight ahead.